and welcome. Hello and welcome a new episode, second part of networking. Network policy. So let's say this is a pod. Then I can say this is incoming. This is exit. Okay. So coming from, exit or going to, coming from, going to. This in I can say grass. This is ingress in. This is egress exit. Okay. You can simply remember E means incoming, I means incoming, IN, and E for exit. This you already know. Now it's a ingress and it's a egress. Ingress supports form block and egress support two blocks. So whatever the traffic coming from, okay, I will give rule for them. Okay, means it's a if network policies is applies to this pod, then if the rule defined ingress rule defined, there's only rich pod can come, then only rich pod can come, only poor pod can come, then only poor pod can communicate. Okay, so network policy, there are two rules, ingress rules and egress rule. Okay, means both way the communication can happen. No, so here the rule contain pod selector, namespace selector, pod selector, then IP block. You can make a combination of and or. If you remove this, it would be the AND combination, means some property of this and this to be matched to communicate with this pod. If the network policy is applied to the namespace, so whatever the pod here, it is applicable to all. By default, you know, this is node 1 pod, this is node 2 pod, this is node 2 pod with inside a namespace, you can say namespace different. Okay, so means this is a pod 1, this is a pod 2, this is a pod 3. So one can communicate to this if network policy is not defined. If network policy is not defined, by default every pod can communicate to each other. Okay, if I will define a network policy on this pod and set a rule that do not communicate with the pod which label is app is equal to 18 plus, then this pod will not means if I defined an ingress rule, so traffic from this pod cannot reach to this pod, and so that's pod number 3. So whatever the rule I make for this pod will follow that type of traffic for ingress and egress. Okay, here we'll make a YAML file for pod API version v1 kind equal to pod metadata name I can say is Iron Man, label I can say it movie 3, and namespace marble, and spec section I can create container, not more container, image nginx name I can give nginx, ports container ports, creating one more this pod API version v1 kind pod metadata name I can say Batman, I can say Spider-Man, man, labels I say same 3, and name is space equal to I can say it's a DC, it's a marvel, but for the sake of logic I can say it or I can say it Marvel Young. Okay, now space container image nginx name nginx ports port 80. No, means this is a pod Iron Man, and this is a namespace Marvel, and label is movie equal to 3. Okay, here 3. This is a Spider-Man, and this is an NS Marvel Young. By default, this pod can communicate to this, and this pod can communicate to this pod without the existence of the network policy. Okay, now I want to create a network policy so that it can apply to those labels only. If means here the label is 3, here the movie label is 3, I want that those pod have label 4, only that pod can communicate to this. So this pod will not communicate to Iron Man pod after provision of the network policies. So I'm creating a network policy API version networking.katest.io/v kind is network policy metadata is what name is very important, don't allow traffic from label bigger ho gaya na, means name is little bigger, so So I short this name. Don't allow form 3 means movie label 3. Now namespace is the source, means namespace I can say it's a marvel. Now spec pod selector match label app equal to what's the label movie 3. Policy type you can say ingress. Now ingress support form block. Form means which pod selected match label, and movie I can say 4. If I say movie equal to 4, then only pod from this label can communicate to this. I have said this, so pod from this label only can communicate to this, and pod from this label should not communicate to this. Now ports, container port. Now here is not container port, here is port 80 and protocol TCP. Great. Now this policy, what this policy says, this movie 3 and this marvel means this network policies apply to this. Now again in this namespace, not for every pod. If every pod is there, then you should find flower bracket is here, but not for every pod. Which pod? Which movie equal to 3 label is there, means particular this pod. And now this pod can communicate to only which have label movie equal to 4. Like you have seen Nokia ad, and this is the only pod can communicate to this label, but the label of this is 3, so this should not communicate to particular this Iron Man pod. So let's practical it with the help of killer coda. We can have this scenario created and we'll solve in next step. Thank you so much for being with me. Have fun. There is no worry. If you worry, there is always worry. Okay, so stay happy, stay tuned. Thank you so much.